We had massive meltdowns, a huge amount of tantrums. We had to get campus security to open it up, and there was a weapon inside, or with a jar of or with a pen, right? And I would be traumatized. You are not obligated to tell the parents any information about a different student.
All right, some spicy teacher podcast topic.
Okay.
So we'll start with topic number one. Are teachers too nice now? Students are not being told no enough. They're experiencing things like gentle parenting. They're seeing, just a lot more behaviors nowadays. Do you think that teachers are being too nice? Are parents being too nice? Or what is the observation that teachers are seeing in school?
I think on the contrary, the parents are the ones being too nice. There definitely is a trend with gentle parenting at the moment. And because of that, I believe teachers are becoming more strict. And it's a necessity because these kids are coming into the classrooms thinking that they have to run around and control everything and they have the power and the teachers need to cater to them and their needs, where it shouldn't be like that, right? The teachers have a schedule as well, and they want the classroom to run smoothly. But if the kids are here, running around and doing things on their own, it's not going to work out. And so a lot of that has to do with the gentle parenting that's coming in place right now. And the kids are not getting consequences. They are not being told no by the parents. And we as teachers learn that we need to be the ones to teach that skill to them and how to just accept the answer of no and to move on from that.
Are there students that have pretty severe behaviors when it comes to saying no? And do they have tantrums? Like, how likely is that occurring?
I mean, it's getting a little bit better now, but definitely when we first started off this school year, kindergarteners were coming in with big behaviors. We had massive meltdowns, a huge amount of tantrums, and these are like more than normal tantrums. They really don't know how to resolve any conflict. They don't have any problem solving skills. And these kind of tantrums were happening multiple times on a daily basis. And I'm not sure if it's because we have COVID babies or maybe it's just the gentle parenting norm that's going on around, but there's definitely a big change in behaviors at this current age.
Sure. I hear like there's even students throwing chairs, spitting on teachers, biting teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Like, is it pretty bad?
Yeah, there's biting, there's throwing, there's actually like cussing too. And I don't know where they got. Yeah,
or
I don't know.
5-year-olds?
Yeah, 4 or 5 years old. They probably learn it from their parents, but it's just a line of respect that you're supposed to teach these kids going into the classrooms that, you don't know this adult, but you still got to respect the adult. And whoever it is, they have the authority power and you have to respect whoever is in that authority, given if it's a teacher or a parent or whoever else.
It sounds like there's a lot of teacher versus parent moments in these kinds of situations. Teachers are complaining that, the students aren't behaving, but the parents say like, well, my child's behaving just fine at home. It often feels like you guys are fighting against each other, but I think that you guys are both right. There's probably situations where the student misbehaves in the school setting, but also misbehaves in the home setting, and there's some middle ground.
Right, and the parents that, don't really take ownership of their child's behavior either does not know that their child really has these behaviors because they don't spend enough time with the child at home. The child comes after school, the parent comes home late, after working all day, and they eat dinner, they go take a shower, and that's it. The child goes to sleep. I've heard, children are going to sleep as early as 7 p.m. now. So that's like, 2 hours that you hang out with your child. So maybe you don't see the behaviors. Maybe you don't have the time to see that. Or maybe you don't see it because after school, you just hand them a tablet and they just, are on the tablet all night long. And I see this because I've done virtual teaching where I can see inside of the classrooms. I've done ABA where I've gone inside of the homes and I actually teach the kids one-on-one. I see tablet time the whole day, screen time, whole day. Parents don't parent and they don't really take the time to, interact with their kids, teach their kids, just play with their kids. They don't do that. And so they really don't have an understanding of their children's behaviors. And also, maybe their children doesn't behave like that at home. I do believe that in a separate school setting and with multiple stimuli going off at once, and maybe with other interactions with kids, it can result to very different behavior than you can see at home.
Parents feel like, and this might be true, some parents feel like the teachers don't care. right? There's probably teachers out there who are also at fault. They might not be spending as much time with their kids. They might just be being lazy at home and not spending time to help them or do whatever. But on the flip side, there's probably teachers who also do the same thing, right? And aren't giving them the attention that they deserve.
Yes, and I agree. There are a lot of parents who are like that. There's a lot of teachers like that. Of course, we can't generalize everybody in that population, but we also have parents, and the parent's job is to be that child's parent. That is your job full time. The teacher's job is also to be that child's teacher. And a lot of times we put a lot of stuff on the teacher's plate where it's not just teaching, but you have to be the parent. You need to discipline the child. You need to do a lot more things like be the counselor, be the nurse. And when it comes to that, you're asking too much from a teacher. And the job of a teacher is to really teach these fundamental skills that the teachers are expected to do, state standards, grade level, mastery, and maybe some social emotional skills. But when it comes to skills that they're supposed to already know going into a school setting, like basic respect to a teacher, respect to an adult, not to throw trash on the floor, just cleaning up after yourself. These are things that we expect a teacher to do, and so, or expect a parent to do. And so if the parents are not teaching that, then the teacher themselves might get fatigued because we are expecting all of this from the teacher. And then we also see teachers who are just not great teachers, right? They don't care. They're just there for the paycheck. And that's really a shame because if you're a teacher, you really need to have the passion for it. And I see a lot of teacher turnovers because whoever comes into the profession not having that passion will most likely leave within the first 5 years.
Kind of goes into our next topic, which is the real reason good teachers are leaving. It sounds like it's not pay, it's not testing, it's the culture. A lot of people don't like the idea of being micromanaged, probably by parents and by admin, but they also don't like being disrespected by these 5-year-olds, right? So there's a lot of different things going on that make these good teachers not want to teach anymore. Have you seen this happen in the workplace, and is it true?
Yeah, I see a lot of teachers quit all the time. And it's not just because of the workload or the parents. There's just so many different layers to why teaching is so hard. It's a very difficult profession, and it really takes a special kind of person to stick with this profession. And when you go into teaching, you think that it's going to be all rainbows and sunshines, and it's going to be fun, the kids are loving, and it's really not like that. The reality is that it's a very emotionally taxing job. And it's kind of like when you go into being a therapist, right? People always say that you come home with a lot of emotional baggage. You, as a teacher, do that as well because you see 24 different kinds of kids, and they all come to you with many different kinds of baggage, many different kinds of trauma, a lot of home problems that you have to be there for. And on top of that, you need to teach them every single day, and you need to be accountable for every single student. And every single student is on different levels, and they learn very differently, and nobody is the same. And so it's very overwhelming to have that kind of mindset every single day and show up every single day for these kiddos.
Mm-hmm. I guess what would your solutions be to solving some of those issues? Like if you saw a first-year teacher today, they had no idea what they were getting themselves into, and all the problems you described are probably things that are going to discourage them from continuing their teaching passion. What are ways to prevent that burnout, or what are maybe long-term solutions that we should implement today to make that environment a better place for teachers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm actually coaching some teachers right now because they're first-year teachers or second-year teachers. And I think one of the biggest advice I have for them is that you really need to set clear boundaries. And it's very difficult as a teacher to not bring home work. And because you're working your contracted hours, but there's a lot of work to be done after you finish work. Maybe on the weekends you need to lesson prep, or maybe you need to go out and buy supplies, right? All of this is done outside of your contracted hours. And because you already have that, and because you have these kids who are coming in with this a lot of baggage, and you have these parents who are demanding all these things, and then you need to also account for you need to please admin, you need to please district, you need to be there for the kids. it's very overwhelming. And so my biggest advice is to really take a step back and create these boundaries that you have, where you have to try placing work on a separate category in your life and compartmentalize, the things that are very important to you and prioritize that. So when you come into your house, focus on your family, focus on the things you need to do at home. Look for hobbies to do on the weekends if you can. Try not to work. If you can, grade only at school and then come home and just stop thinking about work. These are boundaries that you honestly have to learn as the years continue, because it took me like maybe 3 years to figure this out. I was pooling money, time, resources, all for my profession in the first 3 years, and it burnt me out. And it's really difficult to find that boundary until you realize a lot of it is really not worth the time and trouble and the stress of your own self. You need to really find your dignity and save yourself before you save anyone else.
How would you set boundaries for a relationship with both maybe the parents, with the kids, and even with admin, right? There's also personal boundaries that you'd have to make, or maybe with your coworkers too, right?
Yeah, I think boundaries is important, because when you are a teacher, it feels like you're with a family, and especially because you're with them for almost an entire year, right? The whole school year is like an almost entire year, and you have so much relationship with these children, and you get to really know them, and like inside and out. You really love the kids, and you love and care for them. And so having that boundary, it's like, for example, it's hard because like a lot of kids will have home trouble, and you do what you can in school, but outside of that, you can't really do anything. And so it's very difficult to separate that, because personally, you want to just go and you want to help out the kid. Maybe they don't have enough food at home. Maybe they don't have enough clothes. So you want to just go home and feed them and make them dinner and stuff, but you can't. And so you have to remember, this is your profession. You need to be a professional and don't overstep those boundaries. Same with like admin or coworkers. School is also very different from different professions, because you don't go to any other profession and you come to work in pajamas with everyone else, right? Like no one else has pajama day. No one else has seen you with green hair. No one else has seen you with like face paint all over. So it's a very vulnerable career. And because of that, I think we have such a positive culture, hopefully, in your school. And so building that off of each other and having that closeness is great, but you have to remind each other that this is a profession and you need to have that boundary.
Sounds like there's some complaints in the world about how people treat teachers, especially in elementary, more like babysitters rather than professionals. Do you think that is true? And if so, then how should people start making differences between the two definitions?
That's funny, because I just got called for jury duty this week, and it makes me think about one person who said that if jury duty is mandated, they should honestly make substitute teaching mandatory as well, because these people have no idea how hard it is to be a teacher and how taxing it is. And if you were to just step inside a classroom and really just see all the work we do every single day and how hard it is, I think they would have a little bit more respect for teachers. And we're not just babysitters, you will see that for sure. Because even just like kindergarten, right? People will think, oh, we're surrounded around little kids and they're 5 and they don't know how to do anything. They're just so little and babies. But I've taught other grade levels, and kindergarten is the hardest grade level I've had, just because it's not just academics, but you're teaching them social skills, you're teaching them life skills, how to be a good person, how to behave, how to be a good friend. And on top of that, you're teaching them letters, how to read, how to write, how to do fine motor skills. All of that, if you are not taught by a kinder teacher, you can't really just learn on your own. And parents are, a lot of parents don't know how to even start. and how to equip these children with these kind of skill sets unless you have some sort of background in education. And so please don't think of teaching as babysitting, because we are credentialed, licensed professionals who have gone to school, have gotten a degree, and have years of experience of teaching in order to be held accountable for that job. Unless you're, doing a homeschool and you have a background in education, like I said, you really have no idea what is the age appropriate level of skill sets that you're supposed to teach them at that age. Like developmentally, what is appropriate. And so you don't know, like kindergarteners, are they supposed to learn how to read? Like, do they need to know all their letters? At fifth grade, what should they be expected to do? Like, we really don't know unless you follow through with the state standards and you have that curriculum and the scope and sequence to follow through that pacing guide.
Do you think kids deserve privacy at school? Like, let's say if they brought their backpack or their lunchbox or, things that they bring from home that are their personal belongings, should teachers be able to go through those personal belongings, or is there a boundary there too?
I think at a young age, kids do not have a lot of privilege in the sense of
they don't have rights.
They don't have a lot of rights, right? They don't have a lot of rights. And you don't really have a lot of rights until you're probably 18, right? You can't just go and, get a car, right, as a kid. But you earn those as you grow older and you have more responsibilities. But some of the rights that kids have growing up is they should have a right to maybe having their personal space, right? And their personal belongings. Now, I think that's fine as long as it is safe and it is not harmful. I also agree that like some teachers, we find it necessary to go into a backpack because sometimes the kids need that assistance. So as a kinder teacher, I do go inside my children's backpack because I need to take out their homework folders, or they need help trying to put something in, or I have to go and see if a parent has signed the form and given it back to me because they don't know how to find that themselves, right? And then until you teach them that skill, like you really have to help them through it. But when it goes into like, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, they should be able to be more accountable and more responsible for their belongings. So the teachers shouldn't need to go inside their backpacks if it's not necessary. Now, I have another story though, where I had an 8th grader come into the classroom, and the 8th grader was very protective of his backpack, and I was suspicious. And so I had asked the 8th grader to open up their backpack, and he said no. And in that case, because of the defensiveness and because of how I already knew his past history of aggressiveness, we had to open up his backpack, and we had to get campus security to open it up, and there was a weapon inside. And so in that case, like, I'm sorry, we do want to respect everyone's personal space, but we also want everyone to be safe as well. And that goes for the entire school, because I've had many cases finding different kinds of weapons in the classroom. I've also seen kids coming to school with or with a jar of or with a pen, right? And we can't have that at school. So I think if it goes, with safety, then we definitely can go into their backpacks.
I think those cases that you brought up, those are pretty severe cases. Would you say that those kinds of cases are common amongst teaching coworkers, or is that a pretty, sort of a specific case that a lot of people don't experience? Because something like finding a weapon or finding drugs or things like that, I feel like might only happen in very specific instances, or especially in neighborhoods that have a history of, behaving that way, right?
Yeah, I agree. And it really goes case in case with like what kind of neighborhood you teach in and the kind of environment you are in. You know your students, you know the kind of homes they're living in and what they bring to the classroom. My particular case, I had a lot of students where I had to be very wary of these situations. But of course, not everyone is like that. But then you would think everyone's more safe. And then you have a lot of school shootings. I'm sorry, but that happens. And so when we have these safety issues, that's when we need to take the steps to ensure that everyone's safety is in place.
All right, let's talk about teacher unions. Do you think that most of the times teacher unions are worth it? Are they in the best interest of teachers, or are they in the best interest of maintaining their union and making sure that they get their dues and that they're surviving as a union?
I think teacher unions are very important. I think if your district provides that, you should definitely be associated with that union. There's a lot of benefits to the union. Like I'm part of CTA, which is California Teacher Association, and they have a lot of benefits, such as like discounted stuff. You can get your taxis discounted, some hotels discounted. You can also have some of the conferences paid for, and you are given like different kinds of credits so that you can go up the pay scale. And not to say, like, of course you need to pay your dues, but there's a lot of ways where the dues are beneficial. And one of the things that, is a benefit to my teacher union is that if there is ever an instance where you're called into a meeting with an admin and you feel like it's going to be a disciplinary meeting, you can call one of the union reps and they will be there for you as a accountable partner. And so also if it goes into like, hopefully you don't ever go into a legal system, like a legal action, you are given a lawyer by your teacher union to protect you and give you that legal advice.
I want to go into some more drama between teachers and parents, because I feel like there's a lot of burnout that you get from students, but there's probably also some burnout that you get from parents. So apparently, there's a lot of cases of, denial from the parents, where they will say, my child would never do that, teachers have receipts, and admin even gets involved where now you need admin to back you up because they don't believe you, right? Mm-hmm. Is that a pretty common case? And if so, what can you do to make sure that that doesn't happen? How do you get on the parents' side and on the ad?
Yes, that is an issue that we see a lot. It's the parents are always on the student's side, and I don't know when it changed, because back in the days we would always be on the teacher's side. Even like different countries around the world, we're always on the teacher's side. So now in America, I don't know what had happened, but there's a shift in perspective, and the parents are really just not taking ownership of their children's behavior because they feel like it's a personal attack on their own discipline and their parenting styles. And we're not trying to say that, okay? We're just trying to make it known that, we're trying to teach, but little Johnny here is disrupting the class. Maybe he's throwing a tantrum, he's having a meltdown, and it's really disruptive. Us teachers, we do not like reaching out to parents with bad news. We don't like that. We avoid it as much as we can. It's like our last resort. And so if the teacher is coming to you for, to tell you that your child is misbehaving, please listen to them and please believe them, because we don't make up whatever we want just to get this child in trouble. And we always look out for the best of the parent and the kid. And so hopefully what the teacher will do is they go to the parent, they tell them the behavior, and they think of a strategy with the parent to work on at home and in the classroom. And so it shouldn't just be a one-sided thing. It shouldn't just be, hey, Johnny was misbehaving, he was being disruptive, and he was throwing a tantrum. Please work on that at home. You need to tell them exactly what had triggered his behavior, and that's the antecedent, and why it happened, the duration of how long it happened, and whether he calmed down, what was the consequence, and how can we work on this strategy at home together? Here are some tips that I think would be beneficial. What do you suggest? How can we implement this at home together? And what have you done as a parent that has worked with Johnny? And let's work on that together. And so that way the parents really believe that you guys are a team and you're resolving it together as a team.
I think that's an ideal situation. But what if they see it as, oh, you're singling my child out, right? You're giving them punishments or discipline for things that they can't control or things like that, right? So how would you respond to those kinds?
That we're giving them a punishment?
Yeah, or say like, I don't know, let's say Johnny's having a tantrum and you pull him out of the class, or you have him, not participate, or he can't go to recess, and you did single him out, right? And what if parents see that as I don't like that punishment, right? Or I don't like the way that you're disciplining my child. Like, we can work on behaviors together, but what you're doing is not fair, right? Mm-hmm. I guess, is there room for that to be a discussion, or?
Yes, there's room for it to be a discussion, but as a teacher, you also want to build into that. So if you know that Johnny is having a lot of behaviors in the classroom, you don't want to result to Johnny getting no recess at the first time. So what we do is we have a class dojo, right? And class dojo is like a point reward system where students are given +1s for positive behavior and -1s for misbehavior. And the parents can see the progress of the student every single day. They basically track how many points they get throughout the day. And it's also a way where we have communication with the parents, because that platform is allowing us to have messaging within the parents. So that's basically what we use. And so it shouldn't be like, hey, Johnny misbehaved, he got detention. It should be parents are seeing maybe Johnny gets a +1 for sitting still. Maybe he gets a -1 for misbehaving. Maybe he gets another -1 for, throwing a tantrum. And that has happened 5 consecutive days in a row where you're just seeing a lot more -1s. And so it builds upon, the parents are becoming more aware of this behavior. And you also have communication throughout the week about this behavior. Hi, so-and-so, just wanted to let you know, Johnny did a great time today sitting still at the carpet. I really appreciate that. I, gave him a +1 for that. He had a lot of positive reinforcement for that. Now, what I did also notice is that he is throwing a tantrum because he doesn't like sharing his toys. And I had tried this behavior, I had tried this strategy, and it's not working out, and he is still refusing to share toys. And let's work on a strategy together. Does he have any siblings at home? Does he have any toys that he needs to share with somebody? Okay, great. He doesn't have anyone. Maybe he's an only child. Maybe can you work on sharing toys with him at home? And you and him practice sharing and role modeling, how to share appropriately. That should be going on throughout the entire week. Now, after that week has progressed and Johnny is still misbehaving, then you can resort to a more solid consequence, which is like, taking away recess or having him sit down during Fun Friday and working on his behavior rather than getting that privileged fun time. And if a parent will argue back and say, hey, that's not fair, you're picking at my child, then you can go back and show documentation of all the times you've reached out to the parents of Johnny's behavior throughout the entire week. And you can show the records of his behavior and say, this is not a one-time thing. This is not out of the blue. I have been communicating with you. You have seen his behavior and it has not progressed. And so that's why he's getting this consequence. And if you agree with it, you do. And if you don't agree with it, I'm sorry, but that is the consequence and that's going by the rule. And our school does not abide or it does not tolerate this kind of misbehavior over and over again. We gave him many, many chances.
Let's pull up some real life scenarios and see how you would respond to these kinds of situations. I've got a question that says, I've got a kid who rips up his worksheet every single time we do math. Do I make him redo it or do I just move on? What is the proper response to something?
I think the proper response is to first figure out why he's ripping out the paper. If it's just math, then he probably doesn't like math, right? And so you want to ask him personal questions like, hey, how come you're only ripping up the math paper? You don't like math? How come you don't like math? And then you kind of get to know and understand him a little bit. Maybe he has trauma with math. Like when I grew up, my dad would do math homework with me and I would be traumatized because he would just be not very nice. And so I grew up not liking math. And so I understand the student ripping up the paper. Like I would do that too if I wasn't so scared of my dad. But get to know the kid, get to know why he is struggling and so resentful towards math. And then you think of a strategy together. Okay, so if you don't like math, let's go back because you probably are struggling because you don't know how to do the previous step, right? Maybe you don't know how to do multiplication yet because you're in 3rd grade, because you don't know your numbers yet. And so you take an extra time to figure out the holes that they're missing so that they feel more confident in math. And so that confidence really results to them enjoying the subject, right? Because if I'm taking a test and I have no idea what's going on, I will not be happy, right? And so you gain their confidence and you can have them feel more involved. So another way you can do that is Johnny's ripping up his math paper, right? Maybe I won't address it at the moment, but I'll go back to the whiteboard and say, all right, so let's see. If Johnny is ripping up one piece of paper, but then he does that 5 more times, how many pieces of paper does he rip, right? And then we do the calculation together and Johnny's just there like, okay, well, she saw me ripping up the paper, but she's not acknowledging it in a mean, negative way, but she's actually making me feel included into the math problem, and now I feel involved. And they all know that he ripped it because he's making a whole fuss, right? But now everyone's like, oh, he ripped up 5 pieces of paper. And we're like, okay, great. But you know what? Johnny only ripped up 1. So thank you, Johnny, for not ripping up 5, right? And then you move on with the lesson. And hopefully the next time around, he'll be more engaged with the math.
What a good strategy. Another question we got here is, what do you do if one kid throws a full-on tantrum during circle time and it sets off 3 others? Like sort of like a chain reaction tantrum. Is that something that happens?
It happens a lot. It happens a lot. Man, yeah, that just threw flashbacks, in the first week of kindergarten, because you get set off emotionally by other people's behaviors. It's kind of like when you're surrounded with people who are just so negative and you start to feel negative yourself, or if you're surrounded by really positive friends who are just always laughing and always happy, then you feel very happy too. And so the best practice is for you to nip the first kid in the butt so that the tantrum is resolved and so the other kids are not tantruming as well. But that is very difficult to do, especially in kindergarten when they all just, it just sets off a whole chain reaction. And when one kid is tantruming, you do want to address it, but this is where it gets very exhausting because you're trying to read a book and the book takes 10 minutes to read. You have a kid tantruming and you can't ignore the tantrum because it's so loud and so disruptive that the rest of the kids cannot focus on the book. So you got to set the book down, address the tantrum, right? But if it doesn't work, if your strategies don't work and your coping strategies and you try everything and you're exhausting everything and it doesn't work and it causes a chain reaction, you just got to put the book down and do a calm down time with the whole class. And it really sucks, but a lot of lessons can get distracted like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, kids should know the difference between play and work. But this one question talks about how every day one kid, as a teacher, I have one kid who refuses to come inside after recess. What is the proper way that I start addressing that behavior? Do I bribe? Do I drag him? Do I ignore it? Do I just move on? What is the proper method?
Yeah, so we have to figure out why this kid does not want to go back into class. There could be various reasons. The first one I can think of is he doesn't like to go into class. Maybe he feels like it's not a safe environment for him. Maybe he doesn't like learning. Or maybe he just is having so much fun on the playground that he just wants to stay there, right? It can be a lot of things, but you have to figure out the reason why and also if it's a pattern. If it's a one-time thing, it's like, yeah, I get it. Sometimes I don't want to go back to doing work and I want to just be on my phone for 5 more minutes, right? So you have to remind the kid hey, we need to go in because there's a schedule, there's an agenda to things, and we had our playtime, right? If this is a pattern and you see that the kid is doing this every single day, you have to give a consequence. So what I would do is I would set a timer and I would just tell them, hey, you need to go into class, give them one warning, right? Line up and go into class. They refuse. So I'll say, I'm gonna start my timer right now. And every single minute you choose to stay behind on the playground and not go into class is a minute you are getting taken away from the next recess that you're supposed to have. And so the next recess I have, maybe it's lunch recess. When everyone else goes outside for recess, I'll have that kid stay behind for the 5 minutes they chose to stay outside for 5 extra minutes. You have to really be careful because you don't want them to perceive this as a reward.
Interesting.
So if they are sitting behind for 5 minutes when everyone else has already gone to recess, you make it very clear to them, you chose this. This is a consequence of your action. Everyone else is outside playing right now and they're having a blast. Whereas you get to sit down, put your head down, and you don't talk for 5 minutes. You and I aren't having a conversation. This is not fun time. This is your consequence. And they need to see that as a consequence.
I see.
The consequence should be related to their action. So if their action was they spent 5 minutes on the playground, then they would, give you 5 minutes in the classroom, right? That's a equal consequence. If the consequence is they are given a worksheet and they scribbled all over it and they didn't do their best work, the consequence, I would print out a brand new worksheet and sit right next to them, and they would have to do it finished, start to finish, completely in their best work. If they still scribble, do it all over again. Print out a brand new worksheet. I'll say, I got so much paper, let's just stay here all day. Another thing is if a child is just refusing to do work, and they're just sitting, everyone else is doing their work, and they're just not being defiant, but they're just not interested in the work. The consequence to that is when everyone goes out to lunch, you got to sit and do your work. Can take up the entire lunch if you want to, but you can't get that privilege unless you finish your work. Or it can be during Fun Friday too. It would actually be during Fun Friday, not lunchtime, because you can't take away their lunchtime.
Sounds like there's a lot of reward and consequence involved in disciplining for kindergartners. All right, let's take a parent's perspective. So there's a question here that says, my child just came home saying that someone bit them, but the school won't tell me who. Is that even okay?
That's okay. Yeah. You are not obligated to tell the parents any information about a different student. You are allowed to keep it anonymous. You are not obligated to say any kind of information.
But what should the parent do? I feel like if I was a parent and my kid just came home with a gigantic bite mark or was injured, I'd be very upset. Maybe I'd get over it, but I'd want some sort of response from the school saying, this is what we're going to do to fix it.
Yeah,
right?
we do a lot of things to try fixing it. Of course, if the kindergarteners or whoever the student is, if they can't point out who did the biting, and we can't figure it out with other peer witnesses or cameras or whoever, then we can't figure out who did it. And that's really the truth. And I think that the teacher and the admin will try their best to try solving the issue and figure out who did it, but sometimes we can't figure it out. And you just have to address that with the whole class, or maybe address it with the whole grade level, right? If fourth grade is having a particular hard time keeping their hands to themselves, address it as a whole grade level and just say, hey, there's been an incident, this needs to stop. If we ever see anyone doing this again, then you will have a very serious consequence to this, and parents will be involved and admin will be involved, and this will not be pretty. And so parents still, you have to understand that when things like this happen, it's during maybe recess time. A lot of times it's during recess time, and you have hundreds of kids playing around, and you have as many campus supervisors as possible, maybe some volunteers, but it's really hard to see every single detail during recess time. So sometimes parents just need to accept the fact that not everything can be solved.
We're going to do one last question. And, when I read this, I feel like I can't believe this even happens. And maybe it's not a real life scenario, but I had a parent ask me as a teacher if I could make sure that her daughter always gets the pink crayon. Is that even a real request, or how should that be handled?
The pink crayon?
Yeah. I don't know if that's a real request.
The parent requests that the daughter always gets a pink crayon. I would tell the parent to supply her own pink crayon. That's it. I cannot guarantee you that the classroom will give her a pink crayon, because sometimes I don't even have pink crayons. So good luck with that.
Very good. All right, I think that concludes the episode. This was our first attempt at trying to answer some of the questions that teachers and parents have about school. So we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.